Dobro večer svima. Dobrodošli na 30. dafed, koji je ujedno i jubilarni dafed. Jako nam je drago što vas opet vidimo u tolikom broju i definitivno ćemo morati više stolica da obezbedimo. So our first speaker is not from Serbia. Yes, that's why we will announce him in English. He comes from Zurich. He is a full stack web developer. Working for a company called Archaeologic, although I think that he picked the wrong profession because he can easily be a stand-up comedian. Tonight he will talk about user testing. Please welcome Martin Naumann.
All right, so Dobre večer, Novi Sad. That was 99.99% of my Serbian. However, I learned from Google Translate that there's kako stier or stier. I'm not entirely sure, Dafed. So how are you doing? Are you all right? Yes? Cool. By the way, people standing over there or sitting down there, I have a very interesting offer that you will only get this one super, super unique chance. You can... Yes? All right. Ooh. Okay. Oh, now even louder. The German was loud enough without the microphone. Anyway, so there's this very unique chance of, instead of standing or sitting there, you can sit here. And I would actually appreciate that for one very simple reason. I tend to walk around the stage, and I got told that I shouldn't. So if you would sit there, I can't walk around the stage. So if you feel like it is a nice idea to sit here, I highly recommend you doing that now. You can technically also do it during the presentation, but I may be making funny notes about you or your shoes, like, hey, look at the shoes or something, but sure. No, never mind. All right, so I was introduced very nicely. Hvala for that. Yeah, I'm a generic geek. I'm not just a full-stack developer. I am sort of a unicorn person who just does whatever I think of myself as being dropped in by parachute on a problem, and then I fix it. And sometimes I fuck shit up, and that's fine, because I learn from that, and I do better next time. By the way, fucking shit up is a technical term, not a swear word. There's going to be more in this presentation, probably, because it's about user testing, and I did a user test of the Air Croatia website, and it was horrible. Anyway, so I've been a freelancer myself, and I've been working with so many clients. I've been working in various industries. I've been working in renewable energy. I've been working in media. I've been working with Sony BMG at one point in time. That was fun. I've been working in all sorts of companies, starting from very small startups that did magical things, up to companies that were actually banks. So I worked for a Swiss bank. I'm not allowed to say the name, but it's a Swiss bank that has credits. And I didn't say anywhere. Yeah, so I've worked in many different environments, and I've seen certain problems that are based in not doing user testing enough. And most of the times, the companies actually spend a lot of effort in explaining me that they can't do it for whatever reasons they had. And I'm here to debunk that, because you may have a boss who says, oh, we don't have the time, we don't have the money, we don't have the right weather for doing that. Fun story, if you're in the UK and your internet goes down and you call your internet provider in the UK and ask them, like, hey, why is my internet not working? The answer might be because it's raining. I just learned that last week. Hilarious. Anyway, so yeah, I'm working for this company called Archaeologic. I highly recommend you check it out. And I'm on Twitters, and I'm also on GitHub and Tumblr, and I have a website and stuff. And you can come to me and talk to me later if you have questions or suggestions or something. So I'm going to talk about user testing. And the first question that I'd like to answer is, why do I even care? Right? I'm building the product. And once I release, I'm done, and everything will be fine, and I'll be rich. No, that's not how it goes, right? So here's the top 20 reasons why startups fail. And there's a bunch of them that are indirectly related to not knowing how well your product does in front of the user, or how well your user does in front of your product, to say it in a different way, like no market need. How do you even know that your users actually are interested in what you're building? You don't know if you actually ask them and go like, hey, would you use this? And even asking isn't enough, because they may say, yes, that sounds very interesting, especially Swiss people, because they are super friendly. Like, Hey, can I shoot you in the foot? Yeah, yeah. However, it would be nice if you wouldn't, all right? So yeah, don't just ask them, just test it, actually. Some things like getting out-competed. That means that someone else was actually able to figure out what users really wanted and were quicker to build it. So if you would have actually tested it with your users, you should have probably been able to avert that or avoid that. A poor product is very obviously, right? If your product just isn't right or isn't working for the user, you may get out-competed. And ignoring customers is always a bad idea. And we're going to see an example of a company ignoring customers, and with this company, I'm not going to fly again. So yeah, to wrap up, without testing, how do you know if your users understand what your product does? How it helps the user? Do they actually need help in what your product does? Or are they even fine with whatever they are using so far? And how do you know that your users actually want your help? Or how can you actually be the product they want instead of your competitors? Because most of your ideas, someone else will have had them before, and someone else may have already built them and tested them and failed. How can you avoid doing the same thing? Well, without testing, you can't. You have no idea. You're basically flying blind. And so here's an interesting quote. There's a book called Don't Make Me Think from Stephen Krug. It's slightly dated, and it's getting re-released every couple of years because he tweaks it. And it's really, really good, because even if you have no idea in usability, or if you're just developing something, or if you're just designing something, it really helps you understand how to test your product with real users and how to actually think like a user and how to avoid complicated user interfaces. And the quote reads, "After you've worked on a site for even a few weeks, you can't see it freshly anymore. You know too much. And the only way to find out if it really works is to test it." And I'd like to add a little anecdote as well. So this assumes that you have to have worked on it for quite a while until it kicks in. That's actually only half of the truth. Actually, the problem can begin beforehand. Once upon a time, in a country called Switzerland, I've been working with a brilliant company building a banking app, a mobile banking app. And it wasn't for the Swiss market, but it was for the German market. Now, it happens that I am German, so I had a German bank account as well as a Swiss one, and I knew online banking in both of these account worlds. And for me, I didn't even notice that there is a difference, that there's large differences in the way Swiss online banking works versus German online banking works. So for me, it was just normal. It was the normal stuff, so I wouldn't even lose a thought about this. And our designers, obviously, using also whatever they have at home, because they were from various countries, they had their bank accounts there and then had Swiss bank accounts, and they were using online banking as well, even, again, not losing a thought about this whole thing. And so they came to the requirement phase, and they're like, so what's the requirements? Because we want to start with a login and authentication, and how does that work? And I said, well, you have a PIN, like you have a username, a PIN, and a TAN. And they're like, all right, cool. Sweet, we're going to build something for that. Actually, they didn't ask for the login, they asked for the authentication. I'm like, okay, cool. And they went off, and they spent a week thinking about how to make this look nice and how to make it work nice for the user. And they came up with this clickable prototype, and I said in the sprint review, and I said, that doesn't work. And I felt very, very bad, because I saw when the slide went up on screen, and I thought, shit, I forgot. It's different in Switzerland and probably the rest of the world and Germany. I didn't even notice until that point, because what the form looked like is it had username, it had PIN, and it had TAN. And the TAN there in the login form doesn't make any sense. Because the TAN, what happens is you log in with your username and your PIN, and then you're logged in. But you can only read data. So basically, I can see the transactions, I can see the accounts, I can see the balances, but I cannot transfer money. And then when I start transferring money, then my bank will ask me for a very specific TAN, because it depends on what method I'm using. So for instance, I can get a paper from my bank that has a list like 1, 2, 3, 4 until 50, and it has 6-digit numbers next to it. And then they're going to ask me like, so you want to send money to Danilo, so that is, please give me TAN 15. And then I'm going to enter that. But only then. So I can't just enter a random TAN at login, and it doesn't make any sense. And any German person would go, what the fuck? And that was pretty bad, because they spent a week And no one in the team, not me, not anyone else, because I wasn't the only German, no one noticed that. We just assumed, yeah, it's online banking. It's obvious. It's easy, right? It's just these couple of fields, and then you just log in, and it's easy. But people have different assumptions. People have different models in their mind on how the world works. And your model, even if you happen to be the user of the app, or one of the users of the application, you're not the user. Your users will have different concepts and different models in mind, and they may have these conceptions that you have no idea about. And then you hit these roadblocks, because you build this thing, and you build it for a while, and you're like, this is perfect. And then you put it in front of users, and they go, nope. And the worst thing about this is, once they went, nope, they're not going to go, I'm going to try it again. No, you lost them. And that's pretty expensive, and we're going to see how expensive that is later. And then there's this problem of people saying, yeah, you know, we're a small startup. We have, I don't know, X employees, 5 employees. We can't do that. We don't have the time for that. And that's bullshit. I'm sorry, it's bullshit. And I can tell you why. Because here on this chart that I actually completely made up, that's not based on any factual data, but it's based on my experience. But I think it looks nice. It has different colors and nice scales. Anyway, so the point of this chart that I'm trying to make with this chart is, if you do nothing, then you have no idea what you're doing. But if you do a tiny little bit of internal testing with your internal people, with your friends, with your family, you have infinite times more than if you do nothing. And that's pretty good already. And if you then actually go to external people, go to the people that you think may use the application later on, you get even more. And it's not very expensive. You just go to random people on the street and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes? I'm going to pay you, well, in Switzerland you can say, I'm going to pay you a beer, which is probably equivalent of, I'm going to buy you a car in the rest of the world. Anyway, but you can, you know, you get the idea. You get the idea. And then you can obviously go professional and have a professional laboratory where you actually have cameras facing the eye movements and stuff. And that gives you even more, but I'm not sure if you need that if you're a small startup. If you're an enterprise and have figured out that user testing is actually pretty cool, so basically if you have done internal tests and found a ton of issues already, and then you do some external tests and you find a ton more issues, and you're like, actually this stuff is pretty cool, and actually it helps us building the right product. And that's what we want in the end, right? We want the right product. So then you can go into a lab, or you can actually have scientists, professionals. The second speaker is one of those professionals. You can get them on board and ask them to actually do a proper research for you, I guess. And that's cool. So what can you learn if you come to do user testing? Well, I found this very nice in Novi Sad, actually, in front of the hotel that I'm staying. Here you have an indicator on how long it's going to be until it's actually switching to green. So that's pretty cool, because as I explained to you in my anecdote about the banking app, expectations are unclear. You don't know what your users expect, and until you actually test, you will never know what your users expect, and you can figure out these expectations. Also, if you're building applications, you're having a dialogue, you're having a conversation with your users. And the problem with conversations is they can end up as broken relationships. That picture was taken in Zagreb, and there's a museum of broken relationships, and I highly recommend going there. But yeah, you find those. You find the points, if you have a checkout flow, for instance, or if you have an online shop, and the very first thing your online shop does is ask the user for the credit card number. And you test that with real people. They go, huh? I didn't even pick anything. Why the hell would you want my credit card number? You're laughing, but I've seen that. And I'm like, yep, that shop is not my kind of jam. I'm going to go to Amazon because screw you. And that's what you don't want. And you find these things out. I mean, that was a very obvious example, but there's other examples. We're going to see a video later where it's not very obvious, but it is, for me as a user, it's very obviously a break in our relationship and in the dialogue that we're having. So that's very important as well. You learn that. And it's actually very easy to run a usability test. So that's the 101 of running a usability test. You basically get your application or get your website on a device, you go to someone and you ask them questions, or you go like, here, sign up for this. I promise you can enter any bullshit email, we're not spamming you or anything. Just go through it. That's the easiest thing that you can do. With more preparation, you can actually make up a story and walk the user through. That's even better, but start with the simplest thing that you can afford. And probably you can afford 5 to 10 minutes of actually having a user using your application and you taking notes. And warm the user up. That's very important, because as I said, if I just go like, here's my phone, test my application, that is also a broken relationship. But what you should probably be doing is like, hey, I built a thing and I think it makes people's life easier, but I don't know if I'm actually doing it right. And I can't find that out, but you can help me by just using it. You know, I'm not testing you, I'm testing me. And don't worry, I'm not angry at you if you do something wrong. You can't do anything wrong. It's me just, hi. It's me just saying, like looking what you're doing and trying to figure out where I went wrong. So don't worry, just use the application and tell me out loud what you think, because that's also very important. It doesn't help you if the user just sits in front of of the phone or the computer and just types silently away. Make him or her talk about what's going to happen on screen. Make them interact with you verbally, but it's a one-way relationship. You just go, Never ever go like, oh, no, you have to click there. Or no, you're doing this wrong. Never do that. You just go like, interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. Interesting. Okay, I see. And if they get really, really stuck, then you can sort of give them pointers like, okay, that didn't work out, so let's move on. And then just help them come around the hurdle. And just take rough notes. Don't write down everything they say. If you have a thing that can record the audio, perfect. However, some people don't like to be recorded. That's also fine. Then just take rough notes on the most important things where people get lost or where people sort of like hesitate for a moment. Like, what am I clicking? Why am I clicking? What does it want from me? That's where you're interested in. The moments where they get stuck, even if it's just for a second. You want to avoid that. And then afterwards, don't let your user just go and they're like, what the fuck happened to me? Again, that's a broken relationship. Say like, thank you very much. Thanks for using. That was very helpful. We're going to improve the application. If you're interested, I can keep you posted on stuff. If not, that's fine as well. Here, have a thank you, have a gift card, have a coffee, have whatever, have some candy, and then just wrap it up nicely. So it's not very hard, and you can do that within 10, 15 minutes, 30 minutes maximum. So that's pretty cool, and you'll learn a lot. And there's a couple of questions that I keep getting asked, and I'm slightly fed up with that. So one question is, but when should we start testing? I mean, you know, we just have our requirements, and then we're going to build it, and then we're going to test it for bugs, and then we're going to user test, right? And then we go live. No. Or how often do we test? Do we do it once right before live going, or do we do it at the beginning and then at the end, or do we do it once before we actually start implementing and once after we have finished and maybe once in the middle? And the other thing is like, how do we actually test? How do we run these tests? How does that look like? How can I get inspiration for these tests? And the answers are, you test as soon as possible. You start before you actually have a product, because building a product costs money and time and effort. And if you just, I'm in the middle of it and figure out, actually, that's completely bullshit, that's bad. So you start with your idea. And if you have verified your idea, you build simple mock-ups, make simple screenshots with fake stuff. Try that with the users. Make it clickable, then make a simple MVP and stuff. And you progress. And you test again and again and again with every single step that you take. Because in every single step that you take, you may actually screw the user over without even knowing. And that's because of what Stephen Krug said, you're getting blind. You don't know anymore what the real world use case is because you have clicked that button 1,000 bazillion times. And at some point you don't even notice that the label has changed and the label is now actually completely unclear because you know that it's that button and you're like, yeah, whatever. And have your users figure that one out for you. And how often to test? Well, as often as possible. Obviously you can't test daily. That's pretty harsh. If you can, congratulations, that's pretty cool. I highly recommend doing a single test run with someone on the team, right? For instance, every morning before the stand-up, and then have him or her report the results of the test. But that's probably too much for some teams. So test whenever you can. Probably test during the sprint end, like do it in the sprint review, or get someone in from another team while doing the sprint demo and just go like, can you please demo this to us? No worries, it's fine. Just go through it, and then you take notes, and then you see if it goes fine or not. Or test over lunch every once in a week, or go out one day in the week after work and go into a coffee shop and try to get people to use your application and try it out for you, and you sponsor them a coffee or so. And how to test? Well, there's two general ways. As I explained already, you can do here's the application, try it. That's explorative, because the user doesn't know what's happening or what's going to happen, and they're sort of thrown into this, and they should find their way around. However, you can also write a small script, like explain, for instance, we had a script that said, imagine you have just installed a banking application and now want to add this banking account, because obviously people won't give us their real bank account data, so we had a fake bank account set, like use this credentials and type this in, and then try to find out how much money you have, try to find out what accounts do you have. Do you know if you have already paid rent for this month? Figure this one out, and then they actually go into the application like, okay, did I pay this month rent? So I tap here, no, that was wrong. And they're like, damn it, I screwed up there. So that's the two possibilities. You have a script, or you just let the user explore your application. What makes more sense depends on your context and your application, obviously, but you can do both at any point in time. So when to test? So here's a nice chart that's actually based on real data, so I didn't make this one up. And that's the cost of fixing something or reworking a piece of work that you have done. Like fixing the login screen that the designers have created for the company I worked before. And you can see that in design and architecture, that price is present, but it's, I don't know, $100 or something maybe per hour. And that goes into fivefold if you have already implemented something. So that means the moment you say like, yeah, the design is fine, I'm going to make it, I'm going to implement it, and then you give it to users, and then you figure out, oh shit, that was wrong. It's already fivefold the amount of money that you lost and time that you lost on this compared to if you would have tested on the wireframes. As I said in my anecdote, you could have given a wireframe of the login form to a German banking user, and they would have immediately pinpointed, that's not going to work. And with a wireframe, I literally mean you take a pencil, you take a piece of paper, just draw some boxes, and say, username, PIN, TAN, button, login. And I would have been able to look at it and say that that's wrong. Nearly no cost. However, giving me an application that it has all sorts of features, right? And actually is pretty much complete, is feature complete. And then I go on the very first screen that I'm presented with, I go, that's wrong. Then we're already in integration test phase probably, and that's tenfold the cost now, because we may have built integration with the external banking APIs and all sorts of things, and that's really, really expensive to rework because you have to go back to step one, basically. The customer beta test, so I roll out this application to 1,000 users, and 1,000 users tell me, I don't know how to log in because I don't know what TAN to enter. Shit, you're now in 15-fold territory, so it costs 15 times as much as if you would have just done the pen and pencil thing. And if you have released it into the wild, maybe not with a broken login screen, hopefully, but with some other very small detail that people get confused about or stop using the app because of this particular thing, then you're in 30-fold territory. You spend 30 times as much. And that can really, really hit you. If you think about how much are your projects worth, right? And then you think about, wow, that times 30. That's a deal breaker. That can kill your startup. And that is a shame. So how often do you test? Well, you know, most of the times you go through these 3 steps in your projects. You say like, okay, who am I going to build the application for? So I identify your audience. You go like, well, so what's the problem that I'm trying to solve? And then you actually go into implementing the solution to the problem. And you test everywhere. Basically, you have this idea and you go, I think we should build a banking app, and I think it should do this thing differently than all the others. Then you can already start talking to people and actually trying out pen and pencil things. And then they go, no, I'm not interested in this. And maybe you actually figure out, okay, so this young guy over there doesn't care, but this old guy over there, he's actually interested. So you already fix your assumptions that you have in your head, and that might be horribly wrong. Cool. So again, just quickly running through it again as a summary. Test whenever you're about to implement, test after you've implemented it, and testing is continuously done. It's not a one-off effort. Do it continuously, do it over and over again, because you're changing things, and you're changing assumptions, and you're changing models, and changing names and labels. So test that again. So that was that. So how does that look in the different phases? Let's start with the conception phase. So I have an idea in mind, and I may have some wireframes. So there's a couple of things that you can do, and this is a website called Usability Hub, and it's free. You can use it for free. You have to wait a bit, and you have to do tests for other people, but if you don't want to do that, you pay a very small fee, and you can use that. So here we see someone uploaded a screenshot, a mock-up. And that doesn't have to be functional. It's just some random retail me not website, and it has a search bar, and then it has a search button, and it has a bunch of stuff down here. And they asked, like, so here we have 89 people who have tested this. And we asked them a couple of questions, like, what does the site do? And you just see what people think. And this site is probably about something with coupons. And people say, this is about coupons. Cool. But then again, you see, like, find stores over here pretty large. So maybe you should keep an eye on that. If you redesign it, maybe that gets better, maybe that gets worse. So it's worth testing out, because there's some stuff that is a bit weird. Then you ask, or you see the list of things people put in, and there's weird shit like fashion website. That was not a fashion website. So however, that's outliers. That's fine. And then you have other questions. No, that was one question. You can ask multiple questions, but here they only ask one question. Fine. And how this works is you upload your screenshot, and the user sees it for 5 seconds. And it's going to go away, and then they're going to be asked questions. And you can enter these questions. You can have as many questions as you want. And the most prominent question in this stage is, if you have a landing page, what is it about? And if you have a website about dogs, and then you enter, like, what is this website about? And people say, like, submarines. Then you should probably redesign it. If you're in e-commerce particularly, but in any website really, you may be interested in how people go through processes. Here we have an example for a ticket booking process. And you give the user some instructions, and you say, hey, you're traveling from Los Angeles to New York next month. Your mission, find and book the cheapest one-way ticket available. And then you show them a screenshot, like, where's my, here, and they have to then click on certain areas. So you define the action areas where they should be clicking, and then that counts as completed. And you can see that it took people 15 seconds. Where is it? There. 15 seconds, and 15% of the people failed. So there's probably some optimization, but we're doing really good so far, right? It's fine. So step 2, they now have clicked on that particular button. They get a new screenshot, which is like how your process would flow with results, and then they have a bunch of results. And you see that now already 33% of people go like, I don't know, and maybe click something wrong or just abort, just drop out. And it takes them 20 seconds. So yeah, maybe we should make the cheapest one more prominent, so more than just 2/3 of my users actually find the most cheap flight. And then you have the third step, and then you see this, and you're like, what the hell is this graph? But still 50% actually complete this, and they take 13 seconds on this step, so fine. And it goes down, and then you see that at the end, only 31% of your users actually convert. And that's not the best conversion rate that you can have, so you probably want to rework that. And the cool thing is, making up these screenshots isn't that hard. And if you're not a Photoshop genius, you just make it in HTML or whatever you're using for Quickie or Balsamic. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be shiny. You just upload some concepts and see how people actually click on it, or if they understand what you want from them. So you get a lot of insight from that already. And then there's a click test, which is slightly simpler. If you have a call to action somewhere on the side and you want to figure out if people actually see this, then you can have this, and you ask, like, where would you click to start selling a website? And this looks pretty good, because most people actually click on the sell website button here, so that's fair enough. But this is very, very handy if you have a client that says, our website is already pretty good, but we'd like some improvements. Then you can run their own original website with a click like that. Like, do you know how easy it is for people to actually find that? And they say, yeah, it's super simple. Yeah, but your conversion rate says 10%. Yeah, but it's super simple. There's no improvement possible. I'm going to show you something. And then you upload that, and then they see, like, oh, most people click on random shit on my website. What the hell? Right? And then you maybe have even a proposal on how it should be looking, and then you show that, and you test that, and people are, like, 90% of the people are clicking the right thing, and you're like, look, This is how it could be. And you don't even have to discuss this anymore, like, ooh, but does it really work? No, it's there. It works if you do it right. So that's also very simple and very simple to set up. And as I said, it's free if you earn karma points by actually running these tests for other users, or you just pay, I don't know, $10 or so to get a couple of users testing stuff. So that was the conception phase. But what if I'm actually live? So I have this application, or maybe there's a legacy application, or there's a legacy website out there, and I want to see where it has the largest problems. What can I do there? And we're going to see how that could look like. So imagine you just said, imagine you're going to check in a flight from Zurich to Zagreb, which has happened in the past. And please continue. This is the website to check in. Please run through it. And I'm going to run through it. I recorded it, but it's pretty fun. So I'm not sure how well you can see it. So here I'm asked to select where I'm flying from. And I say, okay, I'm flying from Zurich. Search. Nothing happens. Why did nothing happen? Oh, there was a pop-up. Aha, I did not see that. Yeah, whatever. Yes. Why does it ask me? I'm on the web check-in website. Of course I want to start this. Yeah, that loaded pretty long. Why does it ask me for my origin again? I already said whether I'm flying from Zurich. Fine, I'm going to Zurich, and I'm going to flying to... Why does it take so long? Okay. Oh, that loading took so long. Shoot. Okay, so my last name is Naumann. And it asked me for my first name. Why doesn't it ask me for my ticket number? That would be easier. Okay, fine. Because I have that with me right now. Cool, so I click and continue, and nothing happened. Oh, I have to select my flight. There's only one flight. What the fuck? What the fuck? What do you mean it doesn't? What? And now it wants my e-ticket number? What is that? What am I even doing? So that video was 1 minute and 9 seconds. And exit full screen, please. Well, that works as well. And so that was 1 minute. And we found actually a couple of things that were wrong. And I love this picture. It's actually, I took it from Swiss television, and they were trying to explain how fog comes to be in alpine regions. And doesn't really help. So, like, this picture isn't very helpful. We found a bunch of problems that weren't very helpful in checking into that flight. And I was tasked with it, and within 1 minute, I had lots of problems. So I had a broken flow, because what happened is I clicked the button, nothing happened visibly. Because there was a pop-up. There was no reason for a pop-up, because I don't needed that website anymore. I needed to go to the next thing. Why would you do a pop-up, right? And then it asked me for data that I have entered just in the first thing. So why would you do that? And then it gave me a list of options with one option. If I'm only having one option, why do you let me choose? It's like saying, you want soup or salad? Oh, I go with the salad. Yeah, we don't have salad. How about the soup? And you say, yeah, actually happened to me in a restaurant once upon a time. Like, yeah, I'm gonna go with the soup then. Yeah, about that. We have bread. Okay, that's not a soup, but sure. Why are you asking me then? Actually, you know what? I'm gonna skip this. Okay, thanks. Bye. So yeah, that was 3 issues. 3 very big issues within 1 minute. Now, who here still believes that user testing takes a long time to be useful? Who thinks that user testing doesn't take that much time to find interesting stuff about your application? Good. And who here is just checking emails and just going like, what is this guy talking in front of me? Good, no one. That's nice. So, if you have a website and you want to test that, one of the problems might be to find testers. And if that is your problem, that's not an excuse. No, it's not true. Because there's websites like Beta Punch that costs a bit of money, but it's pretty good. And there's another website called peak.usertesting.com, which gives you a free 5-minute video of a user exploring your website. So you submit a link, say, this is my website, and then you can hear and see people doing what I just did for the Air Croatia website, clicking around and going bonkers like, what the fuck is this? Why is it happening? What goes on? Where am I? Who am I? What year is this? So that's pretty handy, and it's perfectly fine. If you want more than just 5-minute videos and have more elaborate tests, you can also go with a paid plan. By the way, you don't have to take pictures or something. I have this all online, and the link is going to be in the last slide, so you can pick it from there. Please just still follow me talking. By the way, I'm very disappointed that no one dared to sit here, but okay, fine. I'm not biting that much. Yeah, and then there's a possibility for doing this with apps, because these services do not work with apps, but if you have some testers, you can do something that's called laptop hugging, which Facebook did once upon a time, and it's pretty handy. So you have a hangout with your potential user, and there's services called Test Hub or TestNet and stuff like that that actually do this. So basically you sign up as a tester to get paid for doing these tests, and you have your webcam in the laptop turned on, and you basically turn it around and use the phone in front of the webcam. So I would stand over here and use the app like that. And they would see what I'm doing on the app, and they would record that and send it to their customers. So that's a very cheap and low-tech way of doing this. You can also buy these super stupid-looking tripods for your phones and actually have a phone in front of another phone or tablet where the app is running. That's also possible if you happen to have more phones than laptops, which everyone has this problem, right? Anyway. And then there's an application called Lookback, which is done by Facebook, which is in beta currently. However, a year ago, they said, yeah, we're going to do this for Android. And it still says that. But so far, it's only for iOS applications. But it's really, really handy, because you see the face of the user that's actually using the application. You see when it was recorded, on what SDK version, on what device it was recorded, what's the username of the logged-in tester, and you see where in the application they are, and you can see the screen as well. So that's pretty cool. And then there's this guerrilla method that I have explained already. You basically take your application into a coffee shop or into a street or whatever, and you just hang out there and try to get people to just try your application with some incentive. Put out, I don't know, plush toys or a coffee or something, give something for free, and they're going to give you their time, and that works pretty well. And the problem with this is it's very hard because people are sort of on the go and they're not really there for this particular purpose, so you cannot really do a scripted session, but what you can definitely do is the explorative testing of giving the app to them and just taking notes on how they do on the application. There's also the possibility to talk to universities, because oftentimes they are actually very open to that, and you can reach out to to the student mailing list and get students for some cheap money to get into a room with you and try out an application or website, which is pretty nice. Yeah, that was the quick run through of the testing session. As I said, the slides are online. I'm online, and hvala very much for listening to me, and I hope that there was some interesting stuff in there. And I do think that we have some time left for questions, and I have spoken really long. Yeah, so if you have any questions, now is the time. Thanks.
Now is the time.
Now is the time, and now there's a question.
Wait, let me give you the microphone, just because we have live streaming. Can you give him the
I can also repeat the question, that's not a big deal. Because it seems to be pretty tricky.
You never mentioned QA engineers, quality assurance engineers.
Ah.
What is their purpose and how are they useful? Do they learn the application as well? So do they have that handicap as developers do when they're testing?
Yes, they do, because as I said, the problem is you have a ton of users. Like, if you start with your application, you have all the users of your application inside your team and 0 outside there. So the experience, the first time user experience, the authentic one, will only exist outside of your team. That doesn't mean that QA engineers are worthless, because they are trained to search for the things that developers are very easy to miss. So QA engineers do make sense, and they may catch more bugs, especially bugs. However, on the user experience side, they might be slightly softer. So the best thing is if you have a QA engineer who's actually tested in doing UX research as well, and can actually go out as well and gather feedback whenever they have some time on their hands, aka never. But you have to make some time for that. But yes, QA engineers are perfect candidates for actually trying that. UX designers as well can do that for you. Interface designers are most oftentimes very interested. And one technique that I forgot to mention that's also very handy is if people let you record test sessions that you do, show that to everyone who is interested and get your developers to also look at it. Because developers, I am a developer myself, and I sit in my office and I'm like, this looks good. I like how this works. And then I see real people going, what the fuck, what sick people do think of these shit. And then I'm sitting there like, I should have seen that coming. So you learn yourself when you actually watch real people, non-developers or non-designers use your application. So that's a very, very handy technique as well. Or actually let developers conduct these things and designers as well. So that's really handy. Does that answer the question? Wait. Any other questions? Yes. Then it gets tricky. We had that problem. It wasn't that big problem because we were actually. So the question was, yeah, sorry. So the question was, how do you do that when you're working or when you develop an application for a foreign market, so not your own market? And then it gets tricky. So we had this problem, obviously, because we were working in Switzerland and we had German banking users. You don't find that many. Well, if you ask a Swiss person, you find too many Germans in Zurich, but. Ignoring that for a second, it's very hard to find people with German bank accounts in Zurich as well. We had the luxury situation of just taking a car and having a day trip into Germany and just doing it in Germany. If you can't do that because you sit in Serbia, but you have your market is Romania or is Russia or is China, obviously making a day trip there is a bit tricky. What you can then still do is you can try to construct a scenario where you have an in-house testing. So you load your candidates, and in the warm-up period, what you do is you sort of introduce them to the thing that they're gonna use. It's not exactly as good as actually testing with the real users, but it's as good as it can get when you do that. A better possibility, in my opinion, but people try to disagree with me here, or do disagree, and that's fine. In my opinion, it's better to then use or try to find in the market that you're developing for, there might be user testing companies. And they might be able to be on a nice pricing if you start with them, because just starting with them is already valuable. And they may conduct some user research in their market for you, which is immediately better because you are then like the person sitting in front or sitting next to the tester speaks their own language, and it's better to do like that. And there's a lot of virtual testing companies that do that. So there's a Swiss company. I forgot the name. I will have to check the name again. What they're doing is they have testers all over the world, and you just say like, I need some Serbian people to test this application, and they have their Serbian people that test for them, and they're gonna do a remote interview over Skype with screen sharing, and then they're gonna do that laptop hugging thing, for instance, if it's an application, or screen sharing if it's a website, and that way you can test as well. Answers the question, good. Any other questions? Don't be shy. Come on. Yes. Oy vey. Yes. No worries. I've never done that, but I definitely, if that is the one. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I have to repeat the question. The question was, do you recommend using ELANs to find testers in foreign markets to recruit them for user testing? Well, yes, if that is one way of getting you to do user tests versus not doing them, do it. I personally do not have any experience, but it sounds pretty reasonable to me to try that. Good suggestion, actually. Yes. Okay. So the question was, how do I budget for user testing, and how much percentage of the budget would I assign to user testing? That highly depends on the budget, and highly depends on the application that you're going to build. If you build some pretty standard application, then probably you're good with 5% of the budget, and it depends on how often you have to test. But if you test on a project that is scheduled for 6 months, then probably testing on a 2 or bi-weekly basis is fine, and 5 to 10, probably 10% is generally a good idea, it's generally a good thing. However, you can obviously cheat by finding the cheapest way of doing user testing. As I said, doing some user testing is already better than doing none. So if the clients often go, I don't want to do user testing. And my experience with that is what you do then is you do one single user test with some internal people. That's only possible if your market happens to be the market that whatever market you're in. If it's not, then it gets a bit trickier, but you do one user test. Do the 5-second test if it needs be within conception phase, which costs you pretty much nothing. And you cannot get some very interesting insights, and you record that and you show that to your client, and the client will go like, I didn't know that. Wow. So if I don't know, it's the application that I want, or it's the website that I want, and I didn't come up with this stuff, and one user can do this is one session of user testing, and that does this to my project. That's cool. And then you can start renegotiating, but 5 to 10% is the minimum, I would say. I would ask UX professionals, we have one here, fortunately, how much they would budget for this, and probably it's much more. But I'm coming from the startup world, it's not too much, it's not too bad. And as I said, if the client doesn't give you any budget, then do the lowest kind of user testing that you can get, because any user testing is better than no user testing. If there's one thing that I want you to take home, then do some sort of user testing, because it's infinitely better than not doing it at all. Do whatever you can do to test with real users, please. It makes your chances of surviving and success much, much larger. Any other questions? Yes? Aha. So the question is, what do I think about unit tests? Do I write unit tests? And how much budget would I assign to unit tests? Whew. Yes, I do write unit tests. Yes, I think they are valuable. There is cases where they are not. I'm not saying that you shouldn't write any tests at all, but if you have a very small micro side project for an event that is a one-off event and the website is going to go down after 3 months, writing unit tests isn't terribly helpful. What you should do, however, is writing integration tests or user acceptance tests. So automate your testing as much as you can. Maybe not with unit tests. If you have no budget to test, then still write user acceptance tests, please, which is automated clicking things and seeing if it breaks. Budget, honestly, I can't remember. It's long ago since I have been doing budgeting for this. I think I budgeted, Jesus Christ. I would make up that number. I pull out a number out of the air and it's 10%, but it's a lie. So sorry. I can't remember how much I would budget. From a timing perspective, I would, depending on if it's a junior developer or a mid-level or senior developer, I would probably budget something between 5 and 15%, because junior developers tend to have problems writing good unit tests, and writing bad unit tests is actually a problem that takes time and money to fix. All right. Yes.
Okay, sorry. I would like to stop.
Well, we're going to take that offline then. I'm around for
we're going to talk later. So, Martin, thank you very much for joining us.